As far as using our subqueries go, we could place subqueries into three main spots, into the select line, the from line, and the where line. Let's talk a little bit about putting a subquery into the select line. Putting a subquery into the select line allows us to access information from other tables and be able to act upon that inside of our select line. For example, maybe what I wanted to do is I wanted to print out a list of orders and I wanted to compare that to the average order amount and show you what the difference is. Or maybe what I wanted to do is I wanted to just simply display what the highest product price was along with a list of individual products. One of the biggest things to keep in mind about putting a subquery into the select line is that the query itself must return a scalar or a single value that we can then act upon. Let's take a look at how we can put a subquery into the select line. Let's connect to our AdventureWorks database, and let's start writing our query. Now, what I want to do in this query is show the difference between the product price and the average product price. Now, if I want to find the average product price, the way that I do this is by saying select AVG for average, list price, from production product. And when I execute this, you'll notice that sure enough, there is my average list price. Well, now what I want to do is I want to use that and show you what the difference is. I'm going to clean things up just a little bit here. I'm just going to put that onto a single line. And I'm going to say select name. And then I'm going to say list price minus, and then we'll put our subquery in parentheses. And we'll call this difference from average, and then we'll say from production product. And now, when we execute this, you're going to notice that it will list off all of our products and the difference from the unit price. If I scroll about halfway down and get away from all the items that are priced at 0, you will start to notice that it will print us the difference in the price. So I could not do that, just simply put the average call inside of the select line like that if I didn't have my subquery. Another place that we can utilize subqueries is inside of a from line. By putting it onto the from line, basically what I'm doing is I'm creating my own dynamic table. And this can be very useful for maybe breaking down some complex logic into smaller parts. Now, one of the big things to keep in mind is that if you are going to put a subquery onto the from line, you must alias the result so that way we can actually act upon it. Let's take a look at a subquery in a from line. We'll go back to our management studio here. And what I want to do here is I want to put a slight spin on the query that we did previously. That in the previous query, what we did was we showed you the list price compared to the overall average. Well, maybe what I want to do is I want to show the list price compared to the average for that category. Actually, it'd be subcategory. So the way that we're now going to do this is by doing, again, our select, and let's say name, and let's say list price, and I'm going to come back and edit that in just a moment. And then we'll say from, and we'll go with production product P. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say inner join, and then in parentheses, we'll say select, and we'll grab our product subcategory ID and the average list price as average list price from production product. Now, one of the things that I always try and do whenever I'm doing demos is I try and do something that is relatively close to what you might see real world while still keeping it relatively straightforward for demo purposes. So basically what I look for is something that's got enough meat to be able to sink your teeth into it, but not so much that it's going to overwhelm somebody who's new to the topic. That being said, in order to get this little demo to work, I am going to have to sneak in a little bit of SQL that we haven't yet talked about, and that's going to be the group by statement. In a 10-second explanation, the group by will just simply create groups, and my average will now act upon each group. We'll talk more about putting together our aggregates and our group by statements in another lesson. But for right now, we'll just kind of treat this tantamount to magic, if you will. So I'm going to say group by product subcategory ID. And then again, we need to alias this. So let's go ahead and say as, and let's call this AP for average products. And then I'm just going to kick back and say on P product. There's the P on my keyboard. Product subcategory ID equals AP product subcategory ID. So now we'll just do a little bit of cleanup work here. Let's put our semicolon in. And now up at the very top, we've got our list price. Let's go ahead and subtract that from AP and our average list price as difference from subcategory average. And let's also make sure that we're alias everything to say where we're getting it from. There we go. So now when we execute this query, it's going to show us the difference from the subcategory average. The last place that we can put a subquery is on the where line. And this is probably the most common place that you're going to be putting your subqueries. Because more often than not, when you're using a subquery, what you're looking for is things like customers who have placed an order, or I'm looking for maybe orders for a particular product or something like that, where there's a couple of different things that need to happen. There's a couple of different tables that I need to pull my data from. And what I'm looking to do is filter based on the results of another table. And while we could do that inside of a join, sometimes it can wind up being more readable inside of a subquery.